Well, Michael.
Good evening, everybody. Can you hear me okay?
Sure can, thank you. We're somewhere.
Sorry? Yes.
Right. Everybody's organized now. Welcome to the members of the public. Nice to see you all. Welcome to all the people on Zoom. If there is anybody out there, Michael, good to see you. This will be the agenda for the regular council meeting of Monday, July the 11th, 2022. In the council meeting, acknowledge with gratitude that we live in the traditional unceded territory of the Squamish people and stewards of these lands and the waters. These lands in the Guadalquam, Golden Island, and the waters surrounding at Paxum House Sound for millenniums. First item is the approval of the agenda. Anybody have anything that they figure has been omitted or would like to add?
There were just two letters that came in.
Yes, I have those.
Revised site operation file report.
Okay.
Revised.
Yeah, got that. Thank you. So that's the late items, and if nobody has any comments, we will approve the agenda by consensus. On to public comments. Oh,
Right, there are a number. We're going to start
Okay.
with Bob Sims regarding the development variance application for 404 Venture. So is Bob here? You can just come sit right up here if you like.
sure.
You.
Welcome and go ahead.
Thank you. And 404 Venture, what we're looking at is a footbridge Cove. It's located in Snug Point, which I think is a sensitive area. It's overbuilt. You can't find a parking space in that area after 7 p.m. There's no place for a party house. And that's what we're looking at, because the decking, the lack of setbacks on that property is pointing directly to an Airbnb. For council to agree to a site amendment on that property is the wrong thing to do. It was built many years ago without any approval, without any building permit. There hasn't been, as near as I can tell, a building inspector. Why is there no red tag? What's wrong with council for these delays? It's the wrong place for a party house. The present buildings that are there can easily be expanded to accommodate an Airbnb, and council should cut across it and say, this is not what we want, where we want it. The buildings on this site were illegally put up several years ago, lacking any oversight, no regard for the area plan, nothing of the sort. Council should not be lifting requirements in this kind of lawlessness, which is what it is. No matter what delays have taken place, they're just fostering the continuation of the illegality. It was ordered to be moved to setback 24 feet some years ago, and the order was ignored completely. No permits, no setback. Council should initiate a demolition permit for the buildings that are there. They're too close to the property lines and far from the setback line. All of us should help to protect some point for what it is. Between the beach, the bay, and the village of Snug Cove. I myself had an Airbnb next door for over a year. There were 78 police calls in 4 months period. And nothing was ever done about it. The owner said, oh, they signed the lease, I can't do anything. This is not the right way to carry out. And this is not why we elect council that we do. 24/7 parties. Lights on all the trees around, all night long. In the case of 404 venture, the lack of setbacks is the opening salvo for ignoring all of the other municipal guidelines. Wait until every other property in the area wants to build out to the site, to the property line. Am I supposed to respond to that?
Yeah, sorry about that. We're over the 2 minutes.
No Airbnb. Why isn't the building inspector here? Why has the council taken years to enforce these setbacks? Speak out for both. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Next we have Katie Milway. Hi, Katie. Sorry. You're muted.
Yep, I'm unmuting. Hi, good evening, and thank you for putting me on the docket. I am a lot owner at 894 Rivendell Drive, one of the 5 who got caught in the sort of reversal of normal process on building permits when the sewer capacity came into question. And I just want to speak to the fact that we have a non-viable situation now with a covenant that's been offered to us to move forward with our building permits, but with no guarantee of the sewer expansion project finish line. So there's not a project completion date. So that particular tool that was used to kind of ease the pain of us having without due process been denied our building permits is not effective, and we can't use it to get construction mortgages. No one will give you a construction mortgage with a covenant that has no completion date on the project. So I just want to set that aside. I know one of the members has signed it who is a builder and is able to kind of finesse things and get things going. Maybe has more visibility because they're closer to the construction situation on the island, but we're not in that position, so we can't sign it and make use of it. So I just wanted to put that forward and ask that be set aside, and that you consider another form of relief, which is to test the capacity that's been enabled by the filtration fixes that have been done over the past year. And I had a wonderfully candid conversation with Patrick, my husband and I did a couple of weeks ago, where he did say that 80% of the known filtration issues have been fixed. And Patrick, I hope will correct me if I misstate anything. And that should in fact have increased sewer capacity for the 1 or 2 homes now that are still waiting for building permits that were active when the rules changed. And he said the issue is no one has looked into the increase. And I'm putting forward a request that the municipality look into how the filtration fixes have in fact increased capacity for the current sewer system, given that there should be less stormwater now draining into the system, et cetera. I couple that with the other candid piece of information I received, which is that the estimate for phase 1, which was our other option, is to wait until this sort of overflow tank was created, has now moved out to 2023. So the last time we chatted, which was in April, and we were at a meeting with all of you, the thought was it would complete in October, and we moved our builders timeline to that. And now we hear that it won't complete before January of 2023 because a blower part was unavailable. And I understand there's supply chain issues, but this is just this receding horizon. And those of us who bought our lots with, priced sewer hookup in the lots, are really being denied justice by having a tool offered to us that's not viable, and not another solution that feels viable, that doesn't drain finances, like putting in a septic field when you've already bought sewer hookup. So that's my comment. I don't know if anyone has a counter comment, but I'd be interested.
Katie, all I would say is that we are doing everything we possibly can to get the remaining people onto the septic. There's absolutely no question about it, but it's just gonna take, it's gonna take.
Onto
time.
septic, but we didn't want septic. You mean on the sewer system?
No, on the sewer system, yeah, sorry, on the
Okay.
sewer, and first we have to do what we have to do on that phase one, and then we have to give time to just make sure it's gonna work, and we can release it. We're very hopeful that it's gonna work.
Well, I understand phase one was the plan and it's taking much longer than expected, but there's this other possibility, which is assessing the capacity that's been enabled by fixing the leaks in the current system. So with water leaking into the current system, things were filling up faster than they should have. Now that won't be happening. That should in fact have increased capacity. When I talked to Patrick, he agreed. He said you just need to, have the approval to go and test that capacity right now. And so that's what I would ask you to do.
Yeah, so we're not in a position to get into the debate here. I just, the CAO has a comment, Liam Edwards.
Oh, Kat, hey, Katie. And I'll talk with Patrick. I'll follow up with him about it, but my understanding is that we would need to wait for the winter to do an adequate assessment to know whether or not those repairs have resulted in the capacity that we need to have confidence to allow more connections to the system. That was my understanding from the consulting engineers. And so I'll circle back with Patrick to double check about the timing of that, because certainly if we could have confidence that we have increased capacity, there's no reason why we would hold that back.
I mean, it's just a couple of houses at this point that are in this limbo zone.
Yeah, understood.
No, we certainly understand that.
Okay, who can I stay in touch with on this? Because I realize not staying in touch, things have happened that we didn't even know were happening, like moving out. Who's the right person to stay in touch with?
I think you can connect with myself and Patrick, and I think you have my email. I think because we were on a call together at one point.
Yeah, we were. Okay, I will do that. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Katie.
Next, we have Tracey Waits regarding the DVP for 404 Venture.
Hi, Tracey, welcome.
Hi, thank you. Also want to thank all of you, just like everyone here was visiting the property at 404 Venture Road, and appreciate the time that you took to investigate and see our concerns. Myself and Derek are here tonight. We're the adjoining property owners next to 404 Venture. And I know that you have a difficult decision to make tonight. I feel some of what you may be feeling, because when our neighbors whom we live beside for 20 years ago, we struggled with contacting the municipality to let them know what was going on and make a complaint that it was a building going off without what we thought was permission, which turned out to be true. And it's quite large, as you saw, and it's not within the setbacks. We're concerned about, and Drew's been really good about listening to me and hearing my concerns about what it could become, because once you relax a setback, and especially when a bylaw is being considered for no minimum lot size for a detached secondary suite, accessory buildings can be turned into secondary suites very easily. And we don't know if the next council, hopefully most of you are here, we don't know what the strength of the council will be to protect us again. And we want fair process here. When people violate bylaws and they don't take out a building permit, it should not be permitted. It's like rewarding someone who broke the rules by giving them what they wanted. And it was not, I know I put a lot in my letters, but it's not like this was because the property was in such a way that they had to site it there. They wanted it there, and it's too close to the properties of them. Thanks.
Thank you, Tracy.
Next, we have Derek Stuart regarding the same.
Thanks for coming by today and having a look at the property and everything. My concerns with the property are a number. One is the future use of the property. We've lived with this neighbor for 20 years and it's kind of like been creeping change on their property. From what I understand and having looked at the map that you people provided, all of the structures that are on that property are non-conforming. One of the structures, the house, has an addition that goes right out to the street allowance, not into the setback, but right onto the street, the corner of the house. And Tracey, she's been interactive with the neighbors to have them not build too close to her fence. But the situation with on my property line is that the building the eave is 12 feet high at my fence. And it's between 6 and 12 inches away from my property line. And we're trying to have a kind of a quiet garden in sort of the south part of the lot. And my experience with the neighbors over the number of years has been that they have some very loud, very noisy, very late parties. And I've had to phone the RCMP a few times, but nothing really seems to happen as a result of phoning the police because they referred it to the bylaw people, and by the time the bylaw people come, there's no noise anymore. It's the next day or the next week or whenever. And I think that aspect of control doesn't seem to work at all. And one of the other concerns is that the buildup of this property or this sort of house or whatever they call a playhouse or party house, and also a sauna, and they have a barbecue and a bench and it's built right up to the property line. I think it's a fire hazard. It's and we're sort of in the process of renovating the house, and we had to get the architect to redesign the house, and we used to have southern facing windows, but it's so noisy there that guests and people they have to bring earplugs in order to deal with that party noise. So we oriented the windows facing to the west and facing to the east rather than facing to my part of the property on the south. And I think that the whole situation is kind of out of control. It's not controlled by the municipality because they don't seem to have, well, they, i.e. you, don't seem to have made any significant steps to have this problem alleviated. As far as I can see, the only thing to do is to either move the house, the different structure, or remove the house. And when I built my house, and it had to add a porch to it, and I was required by the municipality to move my whole house in order to be able to do an extension and put my porch on. I had to move, house moving had to move it 30 feet in order for me to be in compliance at that property line. And I feel that it's kind of basically negligent of whomever's responsible for dealing with these bylaws to allow this construction to take place and to kind of blunt everybody's rules. And the rules of BYLAWS are fairly stringent, like you pay your taxes. If you don't pay your taxes by September, this municipality could sell your house. I think that this is not the way to run a business. And from the corporate part of the thing, I just don't think it's I think it sets a very bad precedent to have this kind of generally ignoring of the kind of rules that you people come and sit and organize and sit down and codify, and now people just say to hell with you. And I think it's
Point well taken down.
I think it's
Wrap it up, dear.
I think it's a serious defect in how this is functioning right now, and I think that it should be brought into brought up to date, you know, not that I don't think there should be any 1 meter setback or anything. I think it should be the proper 3 meters or whatever it's supposed to be. It's a corner lot, basically. I have a corner lot and I have to have 5 meters on one side, 5 meters on the other side, and 3 meters on this property line that we're talking about. And when I go into the, okay.
Yeah.
And
We get the message.
made my point. I think the rules are the rules, and people pay their taxes, and they expect you people, the council, to support the taxpayers, and that's what we pay people to do, is to make this work. And I think this is a prime example of something not working very well, and it's fixable. I just have to decide to do it and do it. Anyway, that's all I have.
Got it. Thank you, Derek.
All right, thanks.
Oh,
Last but not least, you had forms regarding the DVT for Dave Group.
This is my first meeting, and so I just put my name down in case I need to comment on anything about the staff report about the 221 David Road there. I don't have anything specific.
Okay, no worries.
thank you, John.
I move on, just for clarity, for you saying that it's your first meeting and that in case you had something to comment, the only opportunity for public comment is now. So just if later on you heard something, you're like, oh, I wanted to comment. Just wanted to let you
Okay, we'll move on to the consent agenda. Does anybody have any errors or omissions? Anybody have anything there or not? Please. Okay, the recommendations, council approve the items as outlined in the July 11, 2022 consent agenda. We'll move that by consensus. You
Adopted by consent.
adopted by consensus. So, do we have any delegations? You, business arising from the minutes, 6.1, which is development variance permit, DDP 2021-0308 404 Venture Road, Lake Money Limited. Drew Backen, planner one. Drew, welcome.
So it's a presentation mode first.
Okay.
You'll start your screen.
Nice smile.
So this application is for development variance permit 2021-0308 to request a variance at 404 Venture Road. So this property is located on a corner lot along Venture Road in Snug. The property is zoned SR2 settlement residential, which requires a rear setback of 7.5 meters and a side setback of 3 meters. This application is to request that the minimum rear and side setbacks are both reduced to 1.05 meters as they apply to the accessory shed building to the northwest corner of the property. So here's some site photos. These photos face relatively north, one facing north, one relatively west, showing different angles of the building. Sorry, just some other photos on the west side. So this is specifically showing the west side of the building, which faces into 408 Venture Road. So you can see that there's a window on the side of the property, as well as that the fence is lower in that location, which exposes that window. So here are some elevation plans. Some of the first ones showing us the front of the structure, next showing some of the sides and rear. Of course, we can return to these if there are questions. Up on, I should have noted as well, there's these are also showing the connecting roof elements shown indicated in blue between the shed and sauna buildings, so that's proposed. Several alternatives to the approval of the variance are possible. I had corrected this, the first option in regard to some of the feedback from neighbors that pointed out that the height of the building had also been raised in the addition, not just the size. So just pointed out that reducing it to 10 by 10 size alone wouldn't be enough to meet the bylaws. So that first option is, again, if variance is not approved, property owners could reduce the size of the accessory shed back to a 10 by 10 foot size as well. They would have to reduce the height below 2.5 meters or 8.2 feet. That would then exempt it from setback requirements. They would also have to remove one other accessory building to comply with the maximum number of buildings. Second alternative would be for the owners to remove the accessory shed entirely, along with one other accessory building, again, bringing the total down to 2. And a third alternative that I should have mentioned in the reports, sort of thinking is the obvious alternative to getting variance, but of course, there's the alternative that's to avoid the variance process entirely, it would be to relocate the shed and sauna into compliance with those setbacks and along. So that would be to meet the 3 meters from the north and 7.5 meters from the west, along with removing 2 accessory structures to comply with the maximum number of buildings. That's all 3 possible alternatives. Regarding neighborhood feedback, the applicant provided 7 letters of support with the application. 3 letters of opposition were received following the issuance of notices to neighbors. It's noted that 2 of the letters of opposition do come from directly adjacent properties from the north and west sides. So yeah, we have this here that's indicating that blue showing the letter of support, red showing letter of opposition. And in response to concerns raised by neighbors, staff recommended 2 conditions of approval to mitigate possible impacts to neighbors. So one of them would be to require that any west-facing windows on the accessory shed are removed. And the other would be to prohibit the use of the accessory shed as a bed and breakfast operation or as any form of residential guest accommodation. And finally, the staff recommendation is that council issues the development variance permits as amended with conditions for 404 Venture Road, allowing variance of side and rear setbacks.
Is that it, Drew? Okay, thank you very much. A lot of us had a site inspection. So I know there's going to be some varying thoughts on this, but who wants to start her up?
Clarification, with your recommendation, does that include building that roof to the other, to adjoin the 2?
Yeah, that has to happen.
Yeah, and also that roof, it looks like in the picture, there's nothing underneath it, it's open air.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Oh,
Okay, thank you. I'm going to be speaking against the recommendation of staff. Thank you, staff, for the report and for the extra information of the site visit today. But I think about Snug Point, and thanks for the comments from everybody in the letters at various points of view. I think the Snug Point has conservation covenant. I don't know, it's already got noise issues down there already. And but I would also say over the years, I've seen these noise and peace and quiet disturbances from maybe just discussions that I've observed at councils over the years from the Marina on one side and from the what used to be the CNIB lodge on the other side. And I know there's been all kinds of work done by the Cove Neighborhood Association over the years to try and find solutions so everybody can live together. And I think there's congestion happening down there. If in the future the CNIB property is changes hands or something else happens there, and over the years, you know, maybe things will happen on the other side too. I just see the pressure from outside as well as inside. So that congestion is growing. I want to uphold the municipality's bylaws. This is my usual position, so you won't be too surprised by that. I think about the fairness issue that everybody should have the same rules apply, and I don't like placing the burden on the neighbors to have to do the enforcement, the reporting, the trying to convince each other to let them live peacefully on their property. Anyway, I think these setbacks are being asked for are big. And I'm concerned that it went ahead without permission. I like alternative number 3. If you could put the slide back up that has the alternatives. That's the one that I propose, but I know it's not up to me to decide on a alternative right now. I just want to say I'm in favor for upholding the bylaw. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Sue Ellen. David?
Thank you, Gary. This is obviously a very difficult situation. And we have lots of development variant permits come before us, and because so much of Old Bone was built higgledy-piggledy and the lines working. But this isn't quite that situation. And for me, it really comes down to, the setbacks are there to protect the neighbors. And the height restrictions are there to protect the neighbors. They've both been violated. And from the neighbor's perspective, this just doesn't work. It really just doesn't work. I'm not sure what the solution is, because now, the owner could move things or, obviously it's exceptionally difficult, and I hate to put anyone in a situation where they've got to, take apart or make significant changes to something that's already been built, but it's just not tenable. I feel it's really impinges on the neighbors, and that shouldn't happen. We have rules to prevent that, and they haven't been followed. I'm very sorry not to be willing to grant this variance, but that's my position.
Thank you, Maureen.
I also don't support this variance. It was instructed to visit this afternoon and see the fairly recent conditioning of the accessory buildings where they are. They're lovely. They're very lovely. I would be very sad to see them just flat out demolished, because I think they do have that function. But I think all we're considering at this point is whether we issue the variance. And correct me if I'm wrong, but we don't have to come up with alternatives at this time. That would be a subsequent decision for the owners to make. Okay, thank you.
Daniel?
Oh, sorry, I was just gonna make county count.
Oh.
Yes, go ahead, Michael.
Gary, firstly, can you hear me all right? Because I realize
Yes.
I'm speaking wrong. Okay, when this first came across us, I was perhaps somewhat more sympathetic, but the point I take is the same as Councillor Fast. We cannot put neighbours in a position where they have to reinforce our bylaws. So basically, it either conforms, in this case, because when we first came across, we saw nothing but letters of support. It either seriously conforms or it doesn't conform. There is no middle ground in this regard. And I think it is absolutely wrong to expect neighbors to arbitrate in some way. So if we can't get 404 Venture Road totally conforming, then at the moment, as I see it, it's extremely difficult to support this this variance. And I'm normally supportive of variances because I can see why. However, in this case, there is an element of rewarding bad behavior. And I'm sorry, but there is coming a point more and more now where that is something we can't do. So if they can come into line and they can conform, great, and resubmit it, and let's get on with it. But as it stands right now, Mayor, I'm not in a position to support it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Michael. Allison?
So just wanted to confirm one fact. There's a white building on the southwest corner of the property, and if my understanding is correct, they got a development variance permit for that building.
In the southwest corner.
Yes, the white one. Okay, so it's not that they don't understand the rules. The roof is well over height as well. I mean, the bylaw is 2.5 meters and the roof is well over height. I just can't support the variance because there's no indication that they didn't know what they were doing and that it wasn't done accidentally. And if they can come up with a way to get the roof height down to 2.5 meters and shrink, then maybe block off one of the windows, maybe I might be supportive, but it's just the way it stands right now. That's what.
Thank you, Allison. Drew, can you just give me a little bit of history on this? Because one of the letters alluded to the fact that, people had made complaints and the building inspector went out there and there was a stop order, there wasn't a stop order, and this red flag. Do you know anything about that?
It's like an
Or Dan, I don't know.
right. So just like I said, it was built in, and again, so when we're going by when it was built, we're going by people's work because we don't have the record. Right? So according to the applicant, it was built in 2012, and then the first complaints we have. So again, when it was originally built, that would have been 10 by 10, smaller, and didn't trigger the requirement for a building permit or setbacks. But then it looks like it was, again, according to neighbors, it was expanded in around sometime in 2019, and that's when we started getting complaints. And there were a couple years of complaints and delays on part of the property owners due to issues they had.
Yeah, did the building inspector ever get out there that you know of? I guess not. We'd have record of that.
I know the bylaw officer did.
Oh, okay. And what was the action after the bylaw?
So they would have been ordered that this building's in a non-compliant location. You need to either relocate it or apply for a variance that would waive these issues. So yeah, we've been waiting for a variance application for a while.
So were the buildings actually built and finished before the building inspector got out there in the bylaw?
The bylaw.
Sounds like it.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, so if they weren't in a process of construction.
Yeah, so this is the process then of going towards a BVP. Personally, and I just heard it absolutely rebound all the way around the room here. The reason we do have setbacks, and there's a lot of BVPs that we reduce the setbacks on a piece of property, but we look at the piece of property, we see what the effect is on the immediate neighbors, and this one was just a classic example of why we have setbacks, and they have to respond to that. And because it's going to be in somebody's face, and I don't know what the future of those buildings is going to bring in a whole bunch of other stuff. So I'm certainly not prepared to approve it, to go ahead with this. Rob, do you have anything?
I'm very similar to you, Gary, and this is an obvious example where there is impact on the direct neighbors. The direct neighbors are not in support of it, which is another if they were in support of it, it would be a different story, but they're both of them that are affected aren't. So I can't, support this.
So should we just not respond or go with that number 3? Give them an option to.
I think, don't we just deal with the variance tonight?
Yeah.
So, and put the recommendation forward and vote it down.
Well, there's one resolution that could come forward that council will issue.
The number 3. Yeah.
The reason stated in the resolution of council.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Well, so the reasons are that it's totally violating the neighbor's privacy.
Correct. Are you moving that?
No.
I'm seconding it. Any further discussion on this?
I'd like to hear what Cove wrote down there.
Oh, geez.
That's short tonight. Do you want to state specific reasons or?
Well, it says, for reasons stated in the resolution of council, so.
Well, I think
From a process,
reasons
do we have to give reasons?
I don't.
on the minutes.
Oh,
Have to give reasons?
Okay, fine, then I'll, that. I thought I had to.
oh no, I think the staff could probably relay those reasons.
So then the motion should just be the council not issue development variance permit BVP 2021-0308, period.
Correct. And I seconded that. Further discussion again? Let's see. All in favor? All right. Michael?
Yes. Can you see the hand raised, by the way? Does that work?
Hand raised. Yeah, very nice. Thank you, Michael.
Excuse me, could I just ask one question? I know it's
Not really. You can wait till the end of the meeting.
okay.
Okay, so we're gonna move on to bylaws. And this is site alteration bylaw number 568/2022. Daniel Martin, manager of planning and development. Daniel, it's over to you.
Thanks, Drew.
Thank you.
your conversion bylaw 568, which is the site alteration bylaw. And you last discussed this at your meeting on June 27th, your last meeting, at which point you gave the bylaw first reading. And so it's come back before you again for consideration of second and third reading with a few minor amendments to the bylaw. So the first being changes to the whereas clause, so adding removal of trees to the whereas clause to specify that the bylaw does regulate the cutting and removal of the trees and stumps, which would create exposed soil. So we've added that for clarity, but want to sort of stress that it's not a bylaw that would regulate the cutting of individual trees, but it's about the cutting and removal of trees and creation of exposed soil from certain pressure. It would include an exemption for mine activity, effective with a mine permit. So to be clear that those activities are not regulated by this bylaw. And finally, there are minor edits for clarity and the bylaw. And then the other piece to relate to you is that the community charter, so that's section 9, 3C of the bracket there, but requires that bylaws that prohibit the removal of the project soil be approved by the minister responsible, so the Ministry of Energy, Mines and Urban Innovation. So that approval has to take place following third reading and prior to the adoption of the bylaw. And so staff have made initial contact with provincial staff, and so the aim would be that a council proceeds with second and third reading to return the bylaw in September meeting for consideration of adoption. And so with that third staff recommendation, slightly different than what was in the published agenda on Friday, but the bylaw will be read a second time as amended, be read a third time, and be referred to the province.
All right, thank you, Daniel. Any discussion on this? Allison?
So you've added a reference to tree cutting, but it's not clear what's the difference between tree cutting and tree removal.
So the first clause is in relation to trees, period, and the second one is the removal of cut trees.
So what do you mean by the removal of cut trees? Could you put that slide back up? That would help me think.
Yes. I don't think I have the exact language for me. I can share the bylaw.
Okay. Okay. It's control. You have a definition of tree. And you've got a definition of exposed soil. And you've got a definition of removal or remove. And Pemberton bylaw is very clear that tree removal means pulling the stumps, not the cutting of the trees. So the way it's written right now, we're going to be in immediate discussion and, differing opinions as to what that exposed soil clause means. Area of a lot with the vegetation, bracket trees, shrubs, brush, grasses, etc. has been removed. So
Let's say total removal of cut trees.
so what does the and then somewhere else we've talked about and then under removal it says take excavator, extract soil or other material, and somewhere else you do have a reference to moving cut trees. So to me it's not clear. Is there a difference between a cut tree and a tree removal, and just going and cutting a tree isn't necessarily going to cause any soil erosion if you don't pull stumps.
Yeah, so I think what it's going to signal is that the community charter outlines powers of municipalities being to power over trees and power over soil.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with your I still think your whereas is too specific relating to the community charter section. I like the Pemberton one better, but it's the other clauses. We're going to get into a huge Donnie reference to what tree cutting and tree removal.
So again, other than the whereas clause relating to trees, there's nothing in the bylaw itself about tree removal that isn't about creating exposed soil.
Okay, but what is tree removal? Mean, is it cutting the tree down, or is it cutting the tree down and pulling the stump?
So what the bylaw restricts is creating exposed soil. So it will be vegetation and exposing the soil.
frontage. And went through it several times with the mental aspects of thinking about both exposed soil and what it's you from having exposed soil to having unexposed soil that you're a grass seed over. The whole the other concern that I have is that the trees reference is coming into the bylaw subsequent to consultation, the open house consultation with the community, where essentially everybody expressed reservations, if I'm remembering correctly, to the bylaw as proposed. We have no public feedback on the addition of trees to this, to the whereas clauses in this bylaw, and that's a problem for me. So I need to be helped to see why it isn't a problem.
So what was the purpose of putting that in there?
Yeah, I think putting it in the whereas clause is kind of provide that clarity of somebody saying, well, you just referenced soil removal, what about I'm just removing vegetation? And to avoid the argument about, well, we're arguing when you're removing the roots of the tree, and by doing that, you're removing soil with it. And so it's cleaner to put the tree reference in the whereas clause, because we're listing that authority as well, even though the bylaw itself doesn't regulate and continues to not regulate cutting of individual trees on a property.
And I think if I may add to that, correct me if I'm wrong, Daniel, but I think in part, the bylaw is to help inform the development of a property and the siting of a house or whatever may be built on that property. And that it was lacking the tree removal aspect of that, and that somebody could still come in, and currently they can come in and they can clear trees, move soil, and effectively create the preferred building site prior to having a building permit. And so this was being a little more clear about, okay, well, prior to that first step, we would want to have something that would trigger a permit requirement and a conversation with the municipality for any real disturbance of the site prior to.
Would that be considered a disturbance of the site, cutting the tree? If you're not like taking the roots up?
Not cutting individual trees.
Yeah.
You're creating clear cutting and clearing the land.
Right? Yeah. I'm glad that's in there.
And it's like above a certain threshold. So yeah, like if you were clearing the building site and you were flattening your building site in advance of their permission, that would require the site alteration.
But if you're just taking down, arbitrarily 5 trees in different locations, that would not.
Okay. Boy, sure doesn't make it really easily read. I just, yeah. Go ahead. So.
I think it's a good first step, and I think we're still partway through the process that might evolve over the next 20 years. This council had an opportunity. We've been looking at this topic for years now, and we didn't do the hazardous slopes part of it. And I'd be concerned that this, where it does say, clarifies that removing trees creates exposed soil. I think it was clear enough to me that it would stimulate a property developer or owner to come and have a conversation with staff. And that's what.
It's all about it.
Oh, I think. And so I'm in favor, and I'll be voting in favor of the recommendations as presented by staff. I like the changes to bring the what is it about trees up into the whereas, and I think that it encourages anybody who's going to alter the land to come and talk to staff And that's what I think is a good first step. And it's something that we can do tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, so, yeah.
Thanks, I know I agree with most of what's said. I support this. But like Allison, I'm confused with the inclusion of cut trees. Really, there's no definition of cut trees. I mean, to involving the deposit or removal of cut trees. I really don't, I mean, what you're talking about is stumps. Is that not correct? Removal of tree stumps? Exposed soil?
Yeah, I mean, the
Can't say that.
tree as well.
Pardon?
The rest of the tree as well.
Well, sure.
But if you just cut down the tree and you don't pull a stump, then
Yeah,
and so now I'm gonna cut down 3 trees and.
Leave all the stumps up.
Yeah, well, we haven't taken stumps in.
So, but it also says involving the deposit or removal of cut trees. So you can't put a cut tree somewhere on the lot.
it's got like the whereas,
It might confuse them.
yeah, the whereas is listing types of site alteration. And the bylaw itself is regulating.
Right, okay.
Put the whereas about trees, in the reference to tree with the whereas, because if you recall,
I agree.
the last meeting was, it was entirely, I could put forth a better argument. The only parts of the bylaw that were valid were the ones to do with soil. And if you wanted to cover something else.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And I was pleased to see that in the first one, the first whereas, it's in the second whereas.
Yeah. So if you cut down 3 trees and pile them in the corner of the lot, is that the deposit of that tree?
Yeah, so that's a hard to define. I wish there was another wording in there that we could wrap our heads around, because I have a problem. And I just wonder how much it really matters. More.
Suggestion with first whereas, see if this works at all. It's the bluntness of truth. That little word is there on its own, and all the other phrases have more words to them. What we're actually talking about is we're talking about the removal of trees that results in exposed soil.
Right.
Is that right? Rather than trees grown?
Yeah, I mean, the first whereas clause is just specifically listing 3 of the powers of the council in the community charter, which essentially is saying, like, community charter says the council may enact bylaws to regulate prohibit those requirements in relation to when there's a list, and the list is trees, removal and deposit of soil and other material is like another item on that list in the community charter, and the third one being protect the well-being of the community.
And that phrase is directly lifted from the Pemberton bylaw.
But again, too, it's because it's directly quoting the community charter for those 3 powers. So it's just trying to list, like, the community charter gives these powers, and that's what we're following.
The hassle I got is the removal of cut trees. What does that mean?
But yeah, I mean, it's just, yeah.
Which again is in the.
Removed, cut.
And just say deposit removal of trees. Or say it involved the removal of trees.
Why don't you take cut out of there? Why don't you take cut?
Well, this is again, that's a direct quote out of the Pemberton bylaw, but in the Pemberton bylaw, they have the definition of removal or remove means to remove tree or to take, excavate, or extract soil or other material from a parcel on which it exists.
So it's counting trees as a removal.
So remove trees to me means that at that point, you're not cutting a tree, you're removing a tree, which means you're pulling the roots.
Could you, sorry. I was gonna make this.
Yeah, go ahead. Owen.
Yes.
Could you switch the order and instead say, involving the deposit or removal of soil,
Soils and other-
comma, including
Removal of cut.
the removal of trees. So then it's soils first and that kind of links it to the removal of trees, which includes soils.
Does that say the same thing to you? Okay.
Yeah.
How does that? Allison, how does that work with you?
Other materials.
Soils and other materials, including cut trees.
It's interesting that the Pemberton bylaw doesn't have a definition of exposed soil.
To me, when I read it and I changed it in my head right away
Yeah.
to that order. But
Yeah,
that's
it's just a little awkward, that's all.
You also want to make the same switch in the first warehouse in terms of
It's
sequence.
a lot of material. And yeah. Other material including trees.
Now, it's interesting also in the Pemberton bylaw, the definition of deposit. Our definition is no reference to trees. Pemberton says means the placement, storage, filling, spilling, or releasing directly or indirectly of soil, other materials, or cut trees on lands in the village where the soil and trees were not previously located. So that's also my problem with filing on what you lot.
Then ours says say soil or other material.
Yeah, but other material is, that's the direct quote out of the section chart that deals with soils. So I'm happy with giving.
Yeah, that's fine.
Second.
Okay, Read what you've done with these two, where
So it would, the second whereas. Sorry. So it would be the council considers that site alteration involving the deposit or removal of soils and other materials, including cut trees, should be orderly.
that's good, yeah.
Yep.
Works. That's right.
And we're all in agreement that removal of cut trees doesn't mean cutting a tree doesn't, removal of cutting a tree, it doesn't, isn't impacted unless you're gonna pull the stump.
Correct, there's nothing in the bylaw. That's the
Stump is part of the tree,
It's cutting the tree.
I would say.
But if you're cutting the tree,
Yeah, it's still part of the tree.
yeah, but but the bylaw is not gonna prevent me from cutting trees,
No.
but it would prevent me from pulling the stumps of that.
Yes, over a certain area. So again, if like an area, you're allowed to create a soil. So if you were doing that for one tree or two trees in your property, I'm doing a special.
But if I had what is the area? The minimum small area, the first area that triggers it,
20.
I think it's 100 square.
20 square meters, which is what, 200 feet by 200 feet? So if I just wanted to cut down the 10,
It's 200 by 10.
20 by 20 area, I don't need a permit. I'm gonna pull all the stumps,
50 square meters of exposed soil.
but I'm not exposing the soil by just cutting the trees. Okay,
Right then. The recommendation is,
still not really good.
okay, the recommendation is that bylaw number 568, 2022, second is Bowen Island Municipality Site Alteration Bylaw number 568, 2022 be read a second time as amended. The bylaw number 568, 2022 second is Bowen Island Municipality Site Alteration Bylaw number 568, 2022 be read a third time. And the bylaw number 568, 2022 be referred to the Ministry of Energy, Mines and Low Carbon Innovation for approval. I will move that. So I will second it. Further discussion.
Yes. I'm still concerned about this being added to the bylaw with no public feedback and opportunity to see if from the people who do this kind of work on an ongoing basis to see if they have any concerns. It sounded as though they did, and they expressed that at the last open house. And I just would like a plain language version of the impact of this change to be conveyed to the contractors and so forth, as well as the public, so that they understand that this is not a tree cutting bylaw that we are seeking in under the wire. So there's a consultation and communication piece here that I think we're skipping over. The other question I have relates to an exemption from mining. Why is there an exemption from mining being proposed? I can't think of anything that results in greater site alteration than mining.
We have no control.
Yeah, we have no control over it.
So that's the plan.
So if that's the answer, why do we even have to address it in our bylaw?
Yes, so one is like, yeah, our bylaws wouldn't override a provincial mining permit. And then I put in because I've seen it in other site alteration bylaws, and I was concerned then about a referral to the Ministry of Mines, that it would cause issues with that referral. and not wanting to get a rejection from the province and not have time to correct it.
Does it give any advantage to Bowen Island in having it in there? I'm thinking about things like, I'm thinking about other matters where we don't have control necessarily, but we have bylaws that express a municipal position. Is there an advantage along those lines?
And I guess there's an advantage, like, you know, some of our existing bylaws, for example, wouldn't affect federal lands. But we sort of take the position that, you know, if federal lands come to us with a question, we will say that, well, these are our bylaws. You know, if they are in effect, this is what they would do. You have to follow these things, and essentially, you know, assume then that the federal government would follow them as
voluntarily.
yes. And so we sort of work on that basis that, like, we all understand that if push came to shove, they wouldn't have to follow our bylaws. But, you know, we say this is what everyone has to follow. This is our expectation that people follow it.
So the exemption is solely in terms of exemption from paying the permit?
And the permit requirements.
And I think it's also that majority of our bylaws don't require provincial referrals. And so in part, I think what I heard Daniel say is that when this goes to the province for their blessing, they'll know right off the bat that Bowen Island municipality isn't trying to supersede or have concurrent authority with their regulation and their.
And it also makes it clear to the general public that we have no authority over that.
And then my final question is, do you have a sense of the timeline for feedback from the province?
No, I've reached out a few times and I haven't got a definitive answer on it. So I'm sort of optimistic, but I don't have a committee.
Hard to say these days. Is that it? Thank you. Go on.
Thank you. Yeah, that's a good point about the mining. I support it being in there for the reasons that the planner and CAO just described. But also because part of Bowen's land development history has come about through mining claims. And well, it might seem like that would never happen again. I think we have things in the official community plan about gravel pits, which some people call a gravel mine, if you think about the under the lines. Yeah. And so this just sets up the municipal expectations around it, even just so that everybody in the public knows. And also exploration, when claims are staked, there's depending on the well, I don't know very much about it, but I know that they can take down lots of trees, clear lots of land in order to test the viability of the site. And in some other communities, this is, and I think there was one of these back on that happened back, forgotten the name of it, up above Golden Bay Beach there, that road that goes up where we just allowed the secondary dwellings.
Matlin Creek? Matlin Creek?
No. Malcolm, that's it, thank you. And, but anyway, that was a while ago. There's nothing to say that that can't happen again. And so I just think this helps clarify the municipal position. Yeah, thank you.
All right, so we've got this on the table. Any further comments before we take a vote?
I'm in support of this. I'm in support of it, and with the little change we made tonight, worried about what Maureen's saying. I guess I'm looking to Daniel in terms of the meetings. The meetings you've had with the contractors and so on. Would this is your judgment that they would feel that we've leapt ahead and made a change without?
Public consultation.
I guess I viewed it that the content of the bylaw isn't changing. It's changing to the whereas clause. The whereas clauses are to clarify what's in the bylaw, and what's in the bylaw was what we did our presentation with. You know, I did reach out to contractors directly, and I mean, you'll recall from the previous meeting in terms of the survey results, like it wasn't overwhelmingly in favor to begin with, and we tried to make some changes to address that, but.
Okay, in that case, I'm,
I don't know what it is.
and I feel it's engine made manual. I could sizes and stuff.
I'm looking for the section, but I guess it's all I've had a few comments over the last couple of weeks, but you don't know on the site until you get in there as to really how much soil you're going to have to remove. And if you've got to go back for a new permit and, your guy's coming to build your forms in 2 days and you found out you've got 2 extra truckloads of soil you've got to get rid of, you're hooked and your whole construction schedule goes out the window. I mean, the same as up here, we found out with the community center, several people pointed that we have a lot more soil to remove than we thought we did. And we would have been even more further behind on the timeline if we had to go back and get new permits and new everything else for that. So it just, there's I guess it's the inflexibility of it that I'm getting comments on, and the fact that you don't know precisely how much soil you're going to take out or how much you might need to bring in until you're actually doing it. We've got somebody who knows something about building here sitting here in the audience, I think, but I'm not sure. So anyhow, I'm just wondering really how many contractors actually, gave any comments. I mean, when were the open houses held? And what time of day?
Yeah.
When they're all working.
Yeah, so we received 35 survey responses. I don't know, which of those were contractors or not.
Yeah.
And I reached out directly to as many contractors. I couldn't receive feedback from some of them. Some of them thought like, oh, well, it's another thing, but it's not a huge deal. And some thought, no, I really don't like this. This is one more.
Yeah, so I guess if it's a contractor that's just building a single house, maybe it's not such a big deal. And for somebody other than, so the developers.
And I do think in terms of estimating soil amount, I mean, one is like it doesn't seek an area as well. And so based on the area you're estimating, it would, indicate your permit type.
Yeah.
So yeah, some people maybe, you may be. Then
The other side of it.
maybe in your permit type.
I guess I wasn't clear in my comment. The problem is you find out you were going to originally clear and take away, get a permit to deposit 10 trucks of soil. And now you find out you need to be able to deposit 15.
Yeah.
So you got to go get another, either amend the original permit or,
Yeah.
And so all of a sudden, the whole timeline as you're sitting there with this pile of soil that you can't do anything with.
And I do know it's something that's one that we've gotten, feedback from it is either the depositing of soil. So when excavation takes place, it's like the soil gets distributed around the island. Flipped with, I think, from our Bylaw department and the issues they deal with. So one with like the spreading of soil that has invasive species in it around the island, or then dealing with the fact that people who've taken the soil are in development permit areas. And, they've just taken 4 dump loads of stuff out of soil, and now we're chasing after them because they've done work in the area. So, yes, it will be an issue in terms of permitting deposit of soil, and yes, it is a current issue in terms of unpermitted deposit of soil right now.
Anyway, in my mind, we just have to start off on this thing and then see how the rules can change it as we go along. But if something isn't working out as well as we thought it was going to.
I'm not quite sure what 11.3 J for John means. No person may undertake any site alteration so as to do any of the following: result in the coverage of topsoil. You shouldn't cover up topsoil.
I don't know offhand.
Yeah, and I guess it doesn't quite read right, because do any of the following result in the coverage of topsoil? Doesn't make sense. Something's missing.
Can you fix that up then? That it also?
Yeah, I guess so. What's topsoil? I got a pile of dirt somewhere. It's on my rock that's 1 inch thick. That's topsoil.
You can grow something. I don't know. Agronomy guy.
I got general support for the concept of bylaw, but I think we're
overkill.
It's a different approach, but I think certainly a different approach that I thought we were going to take, but it is a different approach and we feel the same way. Anyway, I will ask a question. So all in favor? Opposed? Okay. Councilors Morris and Nicholson. And Michael?
I don't know. We can't hear you. You're muted.
Opposed as it stands.
Okay, thank you. All right. What's passes, yeah. Okay, thank you, Daniel. Are you still around here for a while? No, maybe not.
Oh, he gets to go.
Yeah. So we're going to move on to staff reports. 8.1 is development variance permit DCP 2021-0386 221 David Roy Stone. Planner and it are you around?
Mayor Andrew, I was going to take the role of the Island Community Planner tonight as well.
Yeah, oh, good. That's lovely.
Catherine was not able to join us. With travel issues, but I think the report is there for the variance of 211 David Road, and the recommendation from staff is that council defer the consideration of the variance to the September 26th regular council meeting. So the issue being that this report is that there's several encroachments onto the right of way on the property for a driveway retaining wall encroaching into the road allowed. And so staff would like to pursue an encroachment agreement and have that agreement developed prior to consideration of the variance. So staff recommended that the variance be deferred to that meeting to allow that more time to resolve the outstanding issues.
Okay, thank you. No comment on that, I guess. I'll move that.
Just a question.
Yeah.
Can you say more about the advantage of granting an encroachment as opposed to a variance?
So the encroachment is not for the proposed addition, but the encroachment is for the works on the municipal right of way. So similar to, I think it's similar, but maybe different, but like recently we did one at 205 Highland Trail. So they got a variance for the deck extension and they got an encroachment agreement for the area. Right of way. And so staff recommendations is simply to defer the variance until the encroachment agreement is a little more agreed to, and we have it there to include this council.
Did I get a second on that? I did, so okay. Any further discussion? Okay. Thank you. Michael?
Aye, in favor.
Okay, thank you. All right, so 8.2 is award of contract for the Cove Bay Water Treatment Plan retrofit. Patrick Green, Director of Engineering.
Kristen still with us?
Hey, Mike.
Actually,
Yeah, I'm here, Councilor Morse.
Oh, you're online. You don't get to see your smiling face in person.
Sort of there.
Oh,
There she is.
Just texted Patrick, he was here,
Yeah.
and he disappeared.
How we doing on time?
Night, Daniel.
Pretty good.
Good night.
Thanks, Daniel.
Thanks, Daniel. There he is. Okay.
There you are.
All right, Patrick, you're good to go when you're ready.
Okay, so this is the report on next steps essentially for getting the Cove Bay water treatment plant up and running. As you know, commissioning last summer, and it was looking good until we started running into issues. We had some equipment failures, the filters and the immersion heater. We also had some design issues. We've been working with the design consultants, WSP, and the filtration equipment supplier, Purifics, and we're having a number of challenges which continue. So we did hire a third-party engineering consultant, HDR, was actually the person who's originally involved with the project in the earlier phases, and has a relationship with Purifics and knows about the technology. So they've been very helpful. The main issue that needs to be resolved, we have some agreement on the basics of that. We essentially need to add a breakhead tank and some pumps so that the cuff, the filtration system is discharging to a line that's at atmospheric pressure. Currently discharges directly to the reservoir, which was pursued back at the time of tender at the value engineering process as a cost-saving measure that was reviewed between WSP and Purifics, and it seemed like everybody was on board. It was a great idea. Turns out that it's not so much. We do need to retrofit that. We do have some agreement at least on the basics and the tank and pump that's needed, and so we've ordered that equipment. That has a bit of a lead time, so they're critical path items. We're still trying to get confirmation on the details. I thought we had agreement last week. We got some pricing from Industra, the contractors who built the original water treatment plant. Very familiar, obviously, with the facility, and are have been working with them has been very positive. The issues that we're encountering is not the result of their work. It's equipment failure and design issues that we're dealing with, not the contractor's fault, essentially. So we did approach them and asked for a proposal that essentially along the same lines as what we did recently for the phase 1 wastewater treatment plant upgrades, to bring them on when the design is partially complete, have them assist in confirming the the most cost-effective approach, and then they provided a construction budget similarly to the wastewater treatment plant RFP. In this case, we just requested it from Industra. The other factor, aside from their familiarity with the facility, they are currently, they're currently residing on site for the construction of the Tunstall Bay Reservoir, so that reflects favorably in the pricing that they're able to provide to us. We still have some details to work out, and so the final design is going to be a bit different. The price is going to be a bit different. We're hopeful that it can be lower than what Industra has proposed. We've already talked with them about some cost-saving approaches that we could look at. There are also some other more minor repairs that are needed, which I've outlined in the report. We've looked at the Cove Bay water system reserves, and they're able to accommodate the capital budget increase that would be required, provided that we defer a section of water main replacement that was planned for this year. And we'd be amending the budget as soon as we have more certainty on the costs. And that, I understand, doesn't need to be done right away, but I'm hoping that we can get council authorization to engage Industra, first of all, for their modest, relatively modest fee to assist with completing the design. I think it will be helpful to have contractor input on the constructability and costs, so that when we have something coming, which we currently do from Purifics saying, well, that you need to do it this way, even though thought we had agreement. It's a more expensive approach. I think it will be helpful to have a contractor be able to price that, which we've asked them to do. They're proceeding to look at these two options and we're hoping to get a resolution quickly from there. And I'm hoping, because we don't have council meetings in August, that we can get a council authorization for entering into a stipulated price contract with Industrial for Construction. If we're able to confirm a price that's equal to or less than what they've put in their construction budget for the proposal we've asked them for just recently. So that's the gist of it. If there's any questions, we can address those.
All right. Thank you, Patrick. David, go ahead.
Thanks very well, Patrick. Thank you for this. I read this hopefully. I've got two questions, but the first one is that now I'm not an engineer and I don't have a proper understanding of a lot of what you're talking about, but a general understanding is that back a couple of years ago, we decided that we didn't need a breakhead tank. And that was part of our cost cutting at the time. And now we have the same the same group of experts saying that what's wrong is we need a breakhead tank. So have I got that roughly right, roughly wrong? And why do you feel really confident that this will solve the problem?
This is definitely needs to be done. When going back to when the tender closed and we had to reduce the construction cost by close to $2 million, a very large percentage, in order to be able to afford to proceed. There was a number of changes made, and we were very clear that anything involving or connecting to the Purific system needs to be reviewed with them. And there was actually a email exchange between WSP and Purifix that suggested this, that we discharge directly to the reservoir to simplify the process and eliminate some costs. And so everybody agreed with that at the time. And now, and I think in a previous council meeting, I made some reference to some finger pointing that's been happening. So with this and with other issues. So in this case, Purifix is essentially saying that, no, they never agreed to that because there was no formal change order. Well, there was no cost change item with Purifix contract. So that's typically when we would do a change order. And, so they'd say they're not flat out saying they never said that. They just said, oh, well, we responded to some emails and there was no change order. So it wasn't, that we don't accept any responsibility for that. The only way to force the issue on that would be getting legal services involved, and there's obviously a cost to that, and I'm not entirely sure where that would go.
Okay, thanks. So I guess obviously a very, very difficult situation. So I appreciate that. But my second question then is, when I'm looking at the prices, and this is on page 3 of, on the last page, and we've got the small numbers at the bottom, other repairs and retrofits.
Yeah.
And these are all things that broke because the system's not working. So I would assume, like I think they are, that these would be covered under some sort of warranty. This last $50,000. That,
well,
I see, seeing a right smile.
Well, and that was, yeah, you would think, and that was because as you recall, we've had some repeated failures of some of this equipment, and I was really sticking to a position that, not all of it, but there was a significant portion that is a warranty item, and was running into a brick wall with Purifix on that. and at one point they essentially withdrew, stopped assisting, said, until you pay us, we're not working on this project anymore. I guess what, when we look at the failure of the heater and the filters, what they're saying is that, well, we had this water hammer, which occurred as a result of WSP's design for the TMP rinse. When the filter cleaning process occurs, then that rinse water gets flushed to a tank, and then gets discharged outside to a soak away area, infiltrated. And it is true, the way that was designed, we had some water hammer occurred during some of the runs, which we worked through that and addressed. So they would say, well, it broke because of this. This happened because of the design. It's WSP's fault. And so once again, we're into this, well, whether you agree with that or not, you're not going to change, me or the third party who's assisting us is not going to change, the owner of Purific's mind on that. And so, do you pursue it legally or, pay them to fix it? I guess those are our two choices.
Seems like Purific's don't need to worry about their reputation.
I hope you didn't get that recommendation.
It's hard for me to understand, like, why they, and as a new technology, I would think you want success stories and clients that, speak highly of you, and yeah, they don't, for whatever reason, seem to care.
Thanks, Patrick, and thanks for putting up with this.
Hey, Maureen?
Yeah, you mentioned that Purific's pointed to the lack of a formal change order being issued and using that as the way out. Is there anything, I'm assuming we're proceeding with this. I end up a little bit, but is there anything that we can do to make sure that we're as protected as possible going forward? Is there anything that we need to obtain from Purific's so that we don't spend a chunk of cash here? None of it appears to be going to Purific's and the recommendation that we've got here, but I'm just wanting to make sure that we've covered all of our bases, and that if there's formal stuff, a change order, a confirmation, a letter from the lawyer saying, here is our understanding, that we've done all of that, because we're being given the runaround, and a lot of people need better quality drinking water.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, one of the things we're working on doing here is because we have Purific system and then we have the larger facility, and WSP are the engineers of record for that. So they both have a responsibility for the design. We thought we had an agreement on essentially the discharge point. Okay, if this line is atmospheric, that's the discharge point. We're responsible for testing our system and ensuring that it delivers what we promised it would deliver up to that point. Recently, what the issue we're working through now is that they've changed the goalpost on what that point is, and moved it over to the tank which wasn't what we had agreed. But it is important that we establish that, like, okay, you have to this point here, you have to deliver, the flows and within the quality that your proposal and your our contract requires. And then if anything goes wrong on the other, relating to the other side of the line, it's not our issue. So because we've had this ongoing problem between these two responsible parties. Just delineating that and documenting that delineation as clearly as possible is something we're working on.
Liam?
And adding to that, you might recall that we brought in a third party, separate engineer that was recommended by Purifics that we agreed with, that had worked with WSP before. And so this person has a good reputation with all three parties, ourselves, Purifics, and WSP. And so that third party is essentially ensuring that the proposed plan forward that Purifics thinks needs to happen makes sense and is agreeable to WSP and ourselves, and that everyone agrees with the proposed plan forward. And so that we basically all then sign off on that. And once we complete that work, then things should work. And if not, then that gives us a fallback position to say, well, we've done exactly what you requested, and it was vetted by a third party. Yeah, perfect.
So everybody's actually signed some sort of a document that this is.
Will going forward.
Yeah, that's the intent, is that it's an agreed upon approach forward.
So everybody's going to sign off that this is the cutoff point. You're responsible for here, and you're responsible for here. You're going to get signatures from everybody on that.
I'm not exactly sure.
I think what they've decided to do.
But
They'll-
then
they'll
document
be-
that and have them all sign off on it.
I'm not sure if there'll be actual signatures on it, but there will be some form of agreement.
If there's no signatures, then I don't think it's something. And that seems to have been the issue.
Yeah. Well, Patrick and I can circle back on that, but the agreed upon process has everybody agreeing to the direction forward. And I like your idea. I do think having some formal sign off, and so with an actual signature, not just an email,
will seem to be people that can be trusted.
Yeah.
Gary?
Yes. Go ahead, Michael.
Hi, Patrick. I hope you can hear me because we're both speaking remotely. Patrick, I do empathize. The total capital cost of this project is how many million?
We've spent to date, going back to the beginning, all the planning and pilot testing and road construction, everything, 9.3.
Okay.
And we're looking at an additional 350.
Okay, so we're into the 9+ million on this complex problem, and what you're asking for this evening is somewhere in the region, if I've got this right, is about $193,000 to complete these two asks, so we can move ahead. Am I correct?
983.
Sorry, I'm sorry. You have to speak clearly.
$350,000.
Yeah, but specifically, we're asking for 193 to be authorized. The 350 is the total additional costs with other parties and other issues that have to be fixed. This is
I'm going off the script. Patrick, and I read clearly 193. Well, yeah. and in your opinion, if this proves to be entirely successful, your most optimistic scenario, when all these good moves, all these people coming together, we can actually launch this project and say, job done. Now, we move ahead tonight in this direction when we can actually get this project finished, or finished to a point where it's operational.
Well, we have at least 3 months before we get the pumps. That would be the longest lead time item, which we've ordered already. So July, August, September. Realistically, if we can sort everything out in that time period, and we could have we could have the completion in October. That would be the most optimistic scenario.
You know, Mayor, under the circumstances, given the complexity, Patrick doesn't, only person's behavior he controls is his own, and he cannot be held responsible for the behavior of other major partners in this enterprise. And I certainly support his ask this afternoon with a view to moving this $9 million project forward. These large complex projects are so often hard to finish at the very end. So someone can work out the percentage of what we might still have to spend as well over in the region of $9.5 million. But I certainly support it, Patrick, and I hope it brings the parties together and enables you to move swiftly forward. And we can get this job behind us, because that's something I believe as a council we need to do. So I wish you every success with the individuals you're working with. Thank you, Gary.
Thank you, Michael. Allison?
A couple of questions just has to do with the budgeting. I mean, the total additional expenditures expected are $350,000 in the water treatment plant. And in order to fund that, they're going to defer, so it's not saving, $150,000 expenditure on a water main replacement. Where was the water main replacement and how urgent is that?
It's not as urgent as we thought it was. It's part of that whole system of asbestos cement water mains in the Cove Bay area. So between Miller Road and Senator, the cul-de-sac on Senator, there was water. You know, when we budgeted for doing that project this year, there was quite a lot of chlorinated water seeping out of the bank. There was earlier this year a residential service line next to that property that was fixed and seemed to be the bulk of the water problem. So it's not as urgent as we thought, and we do want to replace eventually all of this AC water main. So we left it. We were hoping to do at least part of that this year, but it will have to be pushed into next year.
So just to be clear, the $150,000 was to fix a water main that you thought was leaking, but now you're quite sure it is not leaking.
Well, we're not sure it's not leaking. We're just, you know, it's not as bad as we thought. It could be leaking.
And the other question is, how much is actually in the Cove Bay reserve funds right now, Kristen? This $200 going to take it down to zero?
Nope. There's actually additional money that had never been included in the water treatment plant budget. There was some you almost want to call it found money. It wasn't found money, but it was surplus, operating surplus that had not been included as part of the budget of about $300,000 last year, as well as something called a deferred revenue, a capital eligible charge that was used and brought into the budget to pay for the water treatment plant. In total, about $600,000 of money that was sitting there available to go to the Cove Bay district to spend on the water treatment plant that had never been contemplated in the budget before. So we used that money to pay for the treatment plant. We preserved their statutory reserve fund. So there is about $500,000 of statutory reserves right now.
Okay, so it's not going to leave them with nothing.
Nope.
No. And we also have a substantial amount of money owing from the Grafton Lakes lands developers.
Yes.
No, but that's timing on subdivision. So just to be clear, this pump and tank and this work we're doing with respect to it was one of the things that was cut in the value engineering process?
The breakhead tank.
Yeah, I see that underneath the reduce the tender price and 0.2 when you were getting rid of the UV treatment system.
Yeah, it was actually integrated with the UV system. So we had a larger building. It had an extra step in the treatment process, UV, which was integrated with the breakhead tank and pump. So we took that whole piece out and reduced the size of the building by 25%. And yeah, so, and we got confirmation with Coastal Health at the time that, you know,
But this breakhead pump tank that was, that's listed, it was in the original plans and it got taken out with the value of engineering. Yes, thank you. So we're basically having to pay for cutting pipes and whatever, that if we left it in there in the first place, we wouldn't be having to pay for it, because it would have been in the original contract.
yeah, if the UV system was still in, it would be.
Stuff happens.
Yeah, okay. So we're in that proverbial, what I call the rock and a hard place.
Yeah, absolutely. So,
Thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to say I'm in favor of the recommendation. I think we have to, we've got this new plan to such and such a stage. We didn't have to get it over the last little bit. And I agree with other comments that have been made. And I think it's a sensitive piece of equipment that needs all the parties to work together. And I'm happy to see that that's starting to happen. And it's complicated, and I did visit the the Nanaimo water treatment plant when it had first opened years ago, and they had a bunch of challenges then operationally afterwards in passing the testing that needed to be done, and it comes down to some tiny things like how you wash the testing vials can make a huge difference because the testing is so sensitive. So I'm just, I think we just need to take the steps, step by step. It's a complicated and high-tech kind of operation, and I support the recommendation. Thank you.
thank you so.
Kirsten,
Yes, please.
yeah, so I'll move the recommendation. Read it out, that council authorized staff to engage industrial construction co-op to assist in completing the design for the required retrofits to the Cove Bay water treatment plant for $2,436.85 GST. The council authorized the mayor and corporate officers to enter a stipulated price contract with Industria for construction of the waste water treatment plant.
Water treatment plant.
Water treatment plant, yes. Come down the road. For an amount not to exceed $191,645.53 GST, and that council direct the chief financial officer amend the Cove Bay water capital budget to accommodate these expenditures. So I move that.
Thank you. And David for the second. Further conversation? None, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Michael, thank you.
Aye. Yeah.
Perfect. Okay, thank you, everybody. Let's hope that is successful. Move on to new business. Councillor Pastor Nicholson, reaffirmation of council's resolution prohibiting recreational motorized use on Mount Gardner. Let's keep this short and sweet.
Yes. I'll just introduce it. This is the whereas are just going over what we've done before. And we just wanted it to be clear that at the point we're at now, that we reaffirm the resolution that we made before. So that's, I can read it all out, but I'm just going to say that little bit in my verbal report.
Okay, thank you. All right, so any questions on this? I don't really think it's necessary, but can't hurt.
And I'd just like to comment, I think we should just be letting the consultation process play out, and, you know, isn't there a chance to find some reasonable ground in between to, given all the kilometers of trails up there, to allow at least one.
Okay.
Do require permits and all that sort of stuff to use it, but.
Okay, so we're only dealing with 11.0 now?
The first 11.1.
First 11.1. See that?
Yeah. I think add one more little thing, and that is just today there was a webinar by Destination BC Tourism about the Sea to Sky corridor, and about how about the big education and enforcement kind of ideas they're trying to put forward to solve what they call a crisis. And I'll just read you from the description of the webinar. It's imperative that we change the behavior of residents and visitors. Failure to change that up. That failure means the communities and the nature-based recreation economy will be in ruins. And this is because more frequent and extensive desecration of communities and natural spaces in this area of the province. That's just over there. And this is, you know, I won't go through the whole long piece of info, but visitor impacts are rising, even right over there. Let's see the Sky Corridor, and we don't have an enforcement budget, let alone the education budget, to be able to manage these things. And I just think we've heard from the people on Bowen. We have concerns with wildfire, from spark arresters on machinery we heard about, campfires, and all the planning and the budget that must be required to manage this, which the whole Sea Sky Corridor hasn't managed. So I just think it's important for the community to know we've been listening to them, and for us to take to UBCM in the fall that we have reaffirmed our resolution.
I think we made it, I thought we made it pretty clear in the last presentation.
Okay, I think we have a mover.
I'll move that.
I'll second that. I wonder if we could just read for the purposes of the video, the therefore.
Yeah.
Of the resolution.
Yeah, you want me to do that?
Yes.
Yeah, please, if you.
So therefore be it resolved that the Bowen Island Municipal Council reaffirm its unwavering stance for non-motorized use on Mount Gardner and reaffirm Council Resolution 20-232, which reads that council support prohibiting motorized use on Mount Gardner. And the council directs staff prepare a submission to Tom Blackbird, Recreation Trail Sites BC, requesting the prohibition of motorized use on Mount Gardner. And that letter is attached to the agenda.
Thank you. Okay, so that's been moved, seconded, and any further discussion? Okay. All right. Michael?
He's got his little yellow hand up.
Oh, there it is up there, sorry, yeah. Okay,
Yep,
Mr.
in favor.
Councilor Morse? Opposed, okay. All right, so then move on to 11.2, I guess, or, well, so. So the next one, Councilor Spassnick, is a reaffirmation of Councilor's resolution of immense support for with fiber LNG.
Sure, this is similar. It's the thank you, Hope, for putting these together. It's just taking the resolutions we passed in the past and putting them into whereas, and then reaffirming our position, having had the delegation come and began hearing from the community and their concerns at the May 24th meeting. And our continuing concerns, and the questions that were raised. So I'll just say the whereas describe what we've done in the past and our concerns, and then it says therefore be it resolved that council reaffirm its position of non-support for the wood fiber LNG project.
Are you moving that?
I move that.
I'll
Yeah.
second it.
Okay, further discussion? All in favor?
Yes. Oh,
Go ahead, Michael, straight.
sorry, Gary. I did have a couple of questions because after the presentation, I remember Councillor Fast said, and I agree that the original resolution was made in May 2020, and she pointed out, and I think rightly, that well, look, quite a lot of things will have changed since then, and I rather thought that the motion today would actually address some of those things that she thought hadn't been covered under the original May resolution. What was that idea dropped that was thought unnecessary to do that? I mean, it's just because I do remember that being said, and I thought it was quite a good idea, but I don't see anything relating to things that might have been said.
So,
Well, I could have put together another whole big report, and we could have had a lot of discussion, but we had heard from the community, and frankly, I don't know whether our support or not support matters very much to wood fiber LNG. So I thought it would be simpler Besides, I didn't have the time to write up a report, so I thought it would be simpler and to just do it as another reaffirm, sorry.
Okay. No, thank you for that. And it just to show, if nothing else, I was paying attention to what you said at the time. So the other question that I had was, so this reaffirmation, is this basically, if not word for word, very similar to the original May 25th, 2020 resolution? Are we basically saying the same thing again?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, but then a slight,
You haven't called.
No.
Yeah, okay.
yeah, then the technical question that I have on that one is that the May 25th resolution was adopted, was passed, regardless of who voted what. That resolution was passed by council. So basically, having said it was passed by council, we all own it. So I'm kind of asking, why are we now putting it out, a motion that we own, to the vote? Because we own it. It'd be very difficult to vote against it. I'm not sure whether Robert's rules have anything on this, but it is our motion that we own, and we're now being asked to vote whether or not
Reaffirming it, try to get some emphasis on. I suspect, I don't know what the reason is personally. I don't think it's really that useful.
I think one of the main reasons, Michael, is that the community has expressed concern about this relatively recently, and also in part of that concern has asked us to reaffirm our support for these motions. So it's intended to provide that assurance, assuming it passes, to the community that we still, as a council, support that position from the earlier meeting.
So I've got the same similar sort of point. Is the reaffirm motion meaning we're voting again individually to say on the motion that council directs staff to communicate to the provincial environmental assessment office of Mona municipality continues to not support the wood fiber LNG project? Is that the motion we're voting on?
No.
Okay, so what does reaffirm mean? Because it wasn't a unanimous vote, resolution the last time. So because council passed a resolution, whether it be 4-3 or 5-2 or whatever, does that mean the other people have to vote yes because it was a council resolution and it was passed and we now own it?
Well, that's what Michael said.
We could change the word reaffirm to declare. Or resolve, something like that.
But we've already made that decision.
Yeah.
Yeah, but if you have already made a decision, yeah, then,
That's what Michael's saying too.
well, Michael, I think we'll vote against it again.
I'm sorry, Councillor, I didn't hear, I missed that.
I'm going to vote against it again, as I did in the first vote.
Yes, repetition, this is a long game with wood fiber, and we're now sort of, this came after their presentation, and I'm glad a little length of time has elapsed as well. And I feel we've stated our case. And I'm sorry, but a good case should not need restating. And very often it suggests there's a problem with the case if it has to be repeated. So I'm not in favor of it either.
Okay. All right, so I'll ask a question. All in favor? Opposed? Councilor Morris and Kale.
Michael, are you opposed?
Yes, I am.
Okay, thank you. Okay, let's move on. CEO update, Liam Edwards, Chief Administration Officer. Thank you, Liam.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll keep it brief. So I just wanted to touch base on the fire hall project, and I ask Hope to jump in and correct me if I got anything wrong. But it is very near completion. There are waiting on concrete for pouring the apron. And we did achieve agreement with the health center to move forward with paving the access easement, which is to the, I think it's
Outside of the building, yeah.
outside of the fire hall.
Yeah.
So that originally we would have left that gravel, but we're looking to get that paved right away because the health center would like it paved sooner than later. And really the building is getting very close to occupancy. It may be closer to the end of July. We were originally hoping for mid-July, was looking more like end of July, maybe pushed into August as we just get into like the final nuts and bolts of things.
Yeah. It's really the buttoning up of the outside elements. The inside it will be ready within the next week or so, but yeah, the apron and the sidewalk area for concrete, as well as finishing grading and doing the water retention pond and swale area. But yeah, it's coming along. We did a walkthrough today for an hour and a half, and it looks great.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's really quite exciting.
So that's just the transition. That's not occupancy. Occupancy window. Occupancy.
No, you're right. Yeah, occupancy.
Yes, yes.
The move is
In mid-August or something.
Probably later.
yeah, we're just gonna wait and see. There's no real rush.
Oh, easy, yeah.
Ribbon cutting ceremony.
Noted.
Well, I'm not going to rush the transition from one fire hall to another for UBC.
Yes.
No, you need to be careful.
Yeah, I'm not going to rush this for UBCM event.
Yeah, it needs to be really methodical just with some of the equipment.
I'm not talking about informal moving in versus us just having a bit of a ribbon cutting ceremony. We can have a party outside. You'll have to be inside.
Oh, so yeah, non-operational, so maybe.
Yeah, I think we just need some formal, here's the building, or even before they start moving in. Once they start moving in, it's our building. Yeah, anyhow, just tiny wise.
All right.
Well, we're planning a landscape even for fall, so it'd be nice to have it when it's looking nice too.
That's terrific, guys.
Please don't whisper to me.
That's terrific.
I think it's very important that we do the ribbon cutting before the election.
Well, that's something that we can consider and we'll bring back to council at the next meeting.
I think so. Okay. I think it's important that we get it happen in the ways that the service to the community needs to happen with the fire service and what's going to work best for the volunteer fire department and for the operation of the department.
Absolutely.
And that I don't think it should be an election thing.
I'm not talking about it being an election thing. I'm just saying it would be very nice to be able to have before an election, one thing done as a ribbon cutting of all the projects. The water treatment plant's not going to be ready. Let's have one positive thing.
Okay,
We'll take that into consideration, but I'm not going to rush the transition from one fire hall to
I'm not
another
talking
for a
about that.
UBCM convention, but that's what I heard. So, I just want to give you a brief update on two road projects. So you would have noticed today was we moved to periodic one-lane closures on Grafton Road for a culvert replacement, right? Just past the Artisan Square turnoff. So that project, you may have noticed the first section of the rotted out culvert having been removed and put on the roadway there, and so that work will continue on, and it will keep it to one lane closure, so it'll still continue to be open, but just expect delays.
It wasn't that open. Didn't have to wait.
And then we're also getting going on the trunk road storm water drain repair work, and in the initial cut and excavation of the storm drain on the intersection there was the discovery of a leak from water main that was under the road, and it was quite a significant leak, much larger than had it been anticipated, and so there had to be an immediate shut off of the drinking water for a portion of the Cove today. But it got back on midday and so the leak was repaired. So that was a good thing. And that leak was likely contributing to some of the failures of the storm systems. So it would have been, you know, constantly providing water to those storm drains. And it wouldn't be the only reason, but it would have been a contributing factor. So it's a good thing that we've actually cut that open and repaired that leak too. So
Perfect.
and that project may feel like it's taken a while to get started, but we're actually started a couple of days ahead of the original schedule. It just felt like a big delay because we had to put gates up to close off the curbside lane for safety reasons.
Liam, I was gonna comment on, I actually thought it's going very quickly. I was like, oh, they got the lines. It's happening quickly. And also, you know, and I think Allison just pointed out this too, traffic has, I've watched the couple of practice fine. So it shows really we got lots of traffic. So at that intersection, I haven't noticed really any doors really.
Oh, I was talking about today's start, not the mess when you get off the ferry.
Yeah, I was out there once or twice for shutting the whole lane down. It seems to be. So, I don't know.
Thanks, Liam. It's great to see action on that. And so with that corner done, you just keep working downhill. Is that what?
Right, the corner is far from done, but that's the start of it. And exactly right, we just keep working down the hill along that curve side.
Awesome.
And that's it.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so up to the council on Metro Vancouver business.
Thank you. Okay, a couple of things. Just to, since we just talked about LNG a little bit more. So the Climate Action Committee on Friday, the Tilbury Marine Jetty and Phase 2 LNG expansion project was before the committee, and there was a long discussion about it. There was a really excellent report that looked into that. I mean, the thing about natural gas as a fuel, of course, it's only has one atom of carbon and CH4. And so it's got a lot of hydrogen compared to carbon. It burns nice and cleanly. But the issue is, what about all the rest of the system, the upstream and downstream? It was a question we asked of them when they were here. And that was the main thing that was discussed. And there's a lot of recent data on that. I just reading more of that the week before, that in many petroleum fields, there's really a 9 to 10% of the methane escapes in some way or another. And and methane is as we all know, way more powerful than carbon dioxide. Normally it's talked about, 20 times more powerful. But if you're talking about over 20 years, which is what we're talking about now, it's 85 times more powerful. So, so there was a long discussion about it. But what happened was we agreed, and this will still go to the board, but if it gets approved by the board, that the Metro Vancouver board expressed its opposition to the Tilbury Marine Jetty and Tilbury Phase 2 LNG expansion projects because of overall concerns related to upstream and downstream greenhouse gas emissions and inconsistency with Metro Vancouver climate targets, and that send copies of all letters and the staff report to Metro Vancouver member jurisdictions for their consideration in taking a similar position. So we'll probably see a little bit more of this.
Yeah, what was how much were they going to expand? Percentage wise, just roughly.
I think it's roughly doubling it. Yeah, but I'm not that sure, guys.
Oh, okay.
A lot of it was for marine use.
Yes, yeah.
That was why I was sort of leaning towards being in favor because of the marine use. But reading the detailed report, you realize actually it's not as useful as I thought. The other thing that's quite interesting for us was the outdoor burning guide.
Yes.
So there was some consultation. Bowen was involved in the consultation on that sometime in the last year. And so open burning, it was passed by the committee, but it will go to the board. There was a really interesting presentation to simplify the process, make it a little bit easier, but nevertheless, the process is still there and it still applies to us on Bowen. Like, does it even deal with backyard burning kind of thing?
Okay.
And no, it won't. As long as backyard burning is okay, as long as you don't have more than 2 piles and they're not more than 3 meters wide and 2 meters high. So that's a pretty big backyard.
That's a pretty big pile.
That's pretty big. So no.
So we're okay.
We're okay. But still, obviously, we do have land clearing burning
Yes.
from time to time. So there was a pretty good presentation by staff. I've asked that they send that to me because it's got like a series of barrels that kind of take you through it.
Yeah.
So if it goes through the board, which I presume it will in 2 weeks, then I'll bring that here. So we can present that to the public so people can see what.
Yeah.
How this will.
So you don't have to go get permit from Metro to do
No,
backyard.
no, you don't talk. No,
You
backyard.
still have to get the permit.
Yeah, you still have all the other things you have
Yeah,
to deal
air
with, but
quality. you can't-
air quality. But no, you don't. The one other thing is, every year they produce,
Other line, they get the same exemption.
they get the same.
Oh, they do.
Yeah, they get the same. Yeah, they just got out of
We
the,
only.
they got out of the other
Get out
one.
of there.
No, they got out of the
Fireplace.
the fireplaces. They got a delay on the fireplace.
Yeah, delay, but
Yeah.
they're wanting to get out of the urban payment value.
Yeah, no,
so
they
don't
don't.
have to.
So Metro Vancouver is responsible for air quality within the region. And this is normally around air contaminants that directly affect your health, but GHGs, greenhouse gases, have been sort of put into that basket as well. So this is a good report, really interesting report, and apparently one has been sent to all the municipalities, so we'll get one. And since we've got a moment, and normally I only take seconds for my report, one of the interesting things with this little graph, which I'm just going to show you all, you can see, those are all the municipalities.
Oh.
And it's our GHGs per capita GHG.
I know we're pretty high.
Including consumption behavior, so food and everything else.
Okay.
Fine. And so I'm just going to ask you all, who do you think? There's one of these is lower than everyone else, and who might that be?
I thought we were high.
You're gloating.
Pardon?
It has to be us the way
You're gloating, yeah.
No, it's just been me. It's Vancouver.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Well, per capita.
Per capita.
Yeah.
Actually, it's not quite true. The lowest is electoral area A, which basically means UBC.
Yeah.
It'd be lower.
Where is Bowen?
Yeah, Bowen is lower than it should be because what they did for BC Ferries is they took all of the BC Ferries emissions, they divided it up by the 22 local governments and gave everybody the same chunk. I actually made it explain that, oh no, I don't think Coquitlam uses BC Ferries as much as well. Exactly. And so if you added that, Lions Bay is the worst.
Yeah.
If you put that transportation on, I'd say Bowen's up there with Lions Bay. Anyway, have a look at this when.
For sure. You think we're gonna get some copies of that?
I asked and they said they will be sending at least. I asked for a bunch and it said, do you have a whole bunch? Well, we haven't printed it yet. They thought it's one for everybody, but they don't.
I think
It's all
I have
online,
one.
but they did say they would send them to municipalities. Actually, I did say, I would check here to see if we wanted more, like, I don't know, do people pick them up off the front desk if their report's there, or is that really a waste of paper?
And nice we had one for council.
It's not printing any of their stuff.
Yeah,
Not even.
if anyone wants to see it, of course, it is online.
I'll give you a link.
Yes.
Yeah, but it is, I find 3 years later when you want to go and find something and they change the link, it's nice to have the hard copy.
Yeah.
Some of that sort of, is it just an annual report versus the plan?
This is just an annual.
Yeah,
report.
the plans.
Yeah. So that's my report.
Great, thank you very much. Good, an update to council on Island Trust business, Island Trust, municipal trustees, Bass and Kale.
Well, Michael with us.
I know,
over
yes,
here.
I know.
There's, I think we'll first reject.
All right, Michael, it's over to you.
By the way, when I'm listening to you, you do cut out sometimes. It's not a perfect connection, just so you know.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Well, for me, it's very simple. It's basically 3 points. As we sit here just 4 months before the next election or so, we have probably an unparalleled amount of information on the Islands Trust, quite simply and readily available. The first piece of information is a piece of information you have, and that was the 2022 Independent Management Governance Review. And I needn't say any more about that. And the other piece of documentation is one received 3 days ago officially, which was the request for the provincial review. And frankly, I'm not going to, the letter from the Islands Trust Chair speaks for itself. And at this stage, I don't tend to elaborate. Point number 3 is, with the upcoming elections, what I would be interested in doing in 2 weeks' time, or our next general council, our next regular council. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, you're starting in and out there a bit.
Sorry, is to put a proposal or look at a possible proposal to put to the vote on the renegotiation as the only municipality in Islands Trust of our relationship with that federation. And if you will leave that with me, I will certainly be preparing to come forward with that. And I hope my wording is quite clear. Our relationship, the negotiation of our relationship as the only municipality within Islands Trust. So let me do that for our next council meeting. And I'm happy now to hand over to Councillor and Trustee Fast for her report. And by the way, I'm sorry, and excuse my voice. I may have got over COVID, but COVID hasn't entirely got over me. So it's a little rough. So thanks for your forbearance on that. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Michael. Sound good. Good enough.
I'll just add a few things. One of them is that the letter from the chair that came to all of the council members by email. So you've seen that, and it's available at the Islands Trust website if anybody wants to see it under letters from the chair there. And to the province requesting the review, which was the vote at Trust Council. It's a governance review. And as Michael has explained, several meetings. I wanted to say I had an executive committee meeting last week, and we put together we approved the Islands Trust Council highlights. So these are available. Let me know if you want them, or you can sign up by email or whatever, and to get them. And that included the report from the consultants who were helping with the most recent consultation phase for the trust policy statement, which is the kind of overall overarching principle that guide official community plans throughout the Islands Trust area, and then any kind of rezoning and things like that. This week, actually, I guess it's Wednesday, I've got Islands Trust Conservancy meeting, and that is followed by a joint meeting, an annual joint meeting between the executive and the Islands Trust Conservancy Board, which is sort of like a separate arm of the Islands Trust. It runs the nature reserves and the natural areas tax exemption program and the conservation covenants and stewardship education. And there's a report in our agenda at 12.8. And 12.7 in our agenda is the official press release of the awards. And we'll hear more about those in September. Hope is nodding. And then I go to Keats Island on Thursday for the Gambier, to chair the Gambier Local Trust Area meetings about land use on Keats and Gambier and not Passage, but Warrior and a few other the islands. So that's just a brief report.
Okay. Thank you very much. Update to Council on Metro Vancouver Regional Parks Committee meetings, Councillor.
We have not met in the last little while. We'll be on Wednesday.
Yeah.
Our regular meeting, and then on Friday, the members of the park committee will be coming to Bellingham for our annual park tour. It's going to be even better because it'll be on the. They're always very fun. Probably a dozen staff probably. And we've always have an opportunity to visit parks that we might not be familiar with. So This time around, I'll be familiar.
Yeah.
But I should mention, I haven't asked to have the agenda for Wednesday's meeting included in our agenda. And I'll get that on our next agenda. But you might want to take a look at it beforehand. There's a couple of embedded reports that are of interest, but of particular interest, I think, will be the draft capital budget. And this is in the public agenda. So the draft capital budget for the next 5 years, the 2023-2027 capital plan, includes a number of Bowen related items. One is identified as park development, and over the 5-year term of the park development, and allocated roughly $16 million. 16.
Okay.
1-6.
In the and it's just described as park development. And in addition, there is an allocation for continuing work on the JV orchard. So they're being reported separately. This is a very good time in the draft budget.
Yeah.
And our process is that we go over it in the Parks Committee. We usually have been having input from the CEO, giving us a little bit of context from all of the other committees that are also reviewing their budget, and then it goes forward into the big hopper of metro budget. But that's a significant chunk of the cash being directed to Bowen.
That it, Marie? Thank you very much. And we'll move on to update council on transport, the mayor's council meetings.
So I'll draw your attention to info item 12.10, which is the Transport 2050 10-year priorities. So that's taking the Transport 2050 overall plan and saying, okay, these are the things we'd like to accomplish in the first 10 years.
Oh, and Island things.
There's things in there. There's a link to the plan and an executive summary, and the executive summary is a very easy read when you go to that. And you know, there's the greenways, buses, systems into parks, and looking at the interregional connection all the way up and down the corridor, and also the funding for smaller communities for things like the bike network and stuff like that.
Yeah.
You know, what can they do for small communities? So that's good. And of course, all of it depends on what really gets done as to what funds can get the funding. So interesting.
Yeah.
And then the other interesting thing, which was the meeting that was on June 30th, was there was approval of that meeting of what was called the Fraser Transit Service Partnerships Policy Framework and the Fraser Mills Agreement. So Fraser Mills is not too far from United Boulevard, below Highway 1 and on the Fraser River, and it's a big BD development, and they want transit in there to get they want a little the bus. Whether it's a shuttle or maybe it's a bus, I'm not sure, but they want to be able to tell people that as they move in, that the transportation's there, not wait till the critical mass of the population gets there.
So that's residential, not industrial.
It's mostly residential,
Wow.
mixed use, and multiple use, MURBs, multiple use residential building. But the interesting thing is they're going to fund through the agreement. BD development through the development is going to fund the first few years of the bus service. And then if the population, so a lot of the discussion was, okay, at what point is TransLink going to be committed to then taking this over and operating it? It's the ridership. So it's a very interesting agreement, and it's thinking about new areas where you want to see the bus service and there's development happening. Then the developer commits the funds to get the bus service running. So anyhow, it was so it's an interesting concept, and this is sort of the first one that's happened.
So that's good. That's a great idea. Yeah, why not?
So anyhow, so that was really the only interesting thing in the public meeting, so.
All right. Well, thank you. That brings us down to question period. And there looks like Derek's left. I don't think he's come back, has he? Oh, he had a question there. I said, we'll come back at the end of the meeting.
Probably gonna
I'm sure he's long gone.
I think.
Gary, do you have a question?
Yes, I have a question.
Oh, that's lovely.
Since Ms. Wade and Mr. Stuart, and myself and a few others came because of 404 Venture, what we got was a denial of a variance permit. We did not get a bylaw officer, a building inspector, a demolition permit. We didn't get any of that. When will we get that?
Well, that's a really good question. I don't know. Until somebody has to put in a complaint.
Well, no, we now know about it.
Probably know about the issues, yeah.
I would have to follow up with our bylaw officer and manager of bylaws to find out what the next step is now that there are, we know that there is a violation and they've now been granted a variance. So
Something
what next?
Yeah,
They've not been granted a variance.
correct.
So what next?
Well, I guess.
We think it should be tickets.
Well, likely, I think with these types of violations, our ticketing ability is actually quite limited. What often can happen is we try to get them to conform. And if they won't conform by either moving or adjusting the building or demolishing the building, then one of our tools is what's called this notice on title, where we basically put a notice on their property title saying that the building is non-compliant. The property is not compliant.
Note itself.
Yes, and so that would impact the sale. And if a prospective buyer should be aware that that building is then not in compliance.
Those of us who came tonight would prefer not to come to do it all over again. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right. And that would be the meeting adjourned. Thank you very much, everybody.